everyone, my name is Luna and today we're going to talk about the inevitable end of Campaign 3 of Critical Role, as well as speculating about what comes next for our favourite nerdy-ass voice actors. Please note that this video does contain spoilers for Campaign 3. If you want to skip those, you can head straight to the Campaign 4 section. There are chapters marked down in the description. Just be wary of the comment section though, that will probably also contain spoilers. Okay, I'm so sorry to do this at the top of the video, but I have a subscriber goal by the end of the year to reach 25,000 subscribers. If you are a regular viewer and you're not subscribed, which quite a lot of you are, I hope you will consider subscribing to support the channel. If you're not a regular viewer and you're new here, stick around, watch the video, see if you like it, and then maybe think about subscribing at the end. I don't know if I'm gonna make that goal. It's a really big goal, but you gotta try. Okay, that's it. Into the video. We are coming up to episode 113 of Campaign 3, and the game has spanned 3 years, kicking off all the way back in October 2021. Did anyone else's life just flash before their eyes just then? This campaign has been somewhat different to the previous two in that it introduced the main story very early on. I think our first reference to the Ruby Vanguard's plot was in episode 6, when we learned that the Loomis twins had been assassinated because of their research and investigations into Ruidus and the Apogee Solstice. Not to mention the links between the Ruby Vanguard and Aurum, Imogen, and Fern's backstories, which would later be revealed. This campaign has had very little time for side quests or exploration of stories unconnected to the Red Moon, and on one hand I have found that to be somewhat disappointing, as one of my favourite things about the earlier campaigns was how each character got their own sort of side quest attached to their character or backstory, but it does mean that I feel a lot of excitement for the upcoming endgame of Campaign 3. Things have literally been building to whatever final confrontation with Ludinus and Predathos Bell's Hells are going to find themselves in for years. Campaign 3 has also done some things we haven't really seen in Critical Role before, namely having concurrent storylines happening with Exandria Unlimited, an in-game flashback played out as a standalone series, and a guest DM coming in to roleplay a character who would normally be played as an NPC. In the lead up to Campaign 3, they said that they would be mixing things up.
So don't be alarmed if and when we mix things up.
And for a long time, it felt like that just wasn't happening, but I'd say in maybe the last 6 months or so, they really have mixed it up. And not just with additional storytellers and characters, but actually mixing the campaign parties. We've seen recently Bell's Hells and the Mighty Nine teaming up to travel to Ruidus, as well as Vox Machina assembling once again to take on the Malleus Key. The last two episodes 111 and 112, have really felt like an Avengers Endgame moment. We're seeing all of our heroes team up to take on the biggest threat Exandria has faced since the Calamity. So when is that endgame going to happen? Well, next year on March 12th, it is Critical Role's 10-year anniversary, and that is an occasion I am sure they're planning on celebrating with a lot of hoo-ha. In fact, we've already seen them kick off those celebrations with their two-country world tour, but I got tickets to Melbourne. They've got a little logo and a new catchphrase.
We're just getting started!
It would make a lot of sense if they were to launch a new campaign right around their 10-year anniversary. It would create a lot of hype, and it would be, just the perfect chance to promote the show to new people. Like, hey, look, we've been doing this for 10 years and we got like a really special campaign coming up that you can jump into right now. It's a pretty momentous anniversary, so I think a new campaign launched around that time would be a great way to celebrate it. So if that theory is correct and they stick with their format of 1 week off a month, that leaves us with around 15 or so episodes left. But that's only if they go right up to their anniversary. In the past they have taken longer breaks between campaigns. They actually might look at wrapping up earlier in the year or even by the end of this year. If that's the case, then we only have about 6 episodes left. If they're going to be controlling Mighty Nine and Vox Machina for some episodes, that could be 1 to 2 episodes per group, with Bell's Hells taking it home for the finish in the last few episodes. It's so crazy to think about, because I think about probably midway through the campaign, I felt like things were really dragging a bit, and I don't know, I was just feeling a bit fatigued by the whole Predathos plotline. But now that we're looking down the barrel of the campaign being over, I'm not ready. It feels like the characters are really only just now starting to sort of band together, and I really want them to have more time to have those moments, especially Dorian and Aurum. But also I'm excited to see, what on Ruidus is going to happen. I feel like it's kind of hard to make predictions about what is actually going to happen in the endgame, because the characters have been given so many options. They can try and stop Ludinus from releasing Predathos altogether. They can go with the Archheart's plan to take in Predathos and control it, chasing away the gods, or they could just throw everything to the wind and let Predathos eat all of the gods. I think they will probably go with the first option of trying to stop Ludinus's plot before Predathos is released, but, who knows what twists and turns we're going to see before then. Some critters have been theorizing that the whole purpose of Predathos is to wipe out the gods and set up a new pantheon and a new magic system so that Critical Role can fully distance themselves from Wizards of the Coast's IP and allow a transition to Daggerheart. But personally, I don't particularly buy this theory just because it feels way too railroady, that no matter what the characters do, the gods are going to get eaten. I think that would feel pretty unsatisfying for both the cast and the audience after 3 years. However, I think even if Predathos is not released, there are still going to be world-changing ramifications to Exandria. Most notably, the world knows that there are aliens now, and those aliens will probably come and live on Exandria. If there is a large influx of refugee Rhuidians, new people who want to experience the beauty of Exandria, that could drastically change the societal makeup of the world. We have seen the ramifications of Campaign 1 reflected in Tal'Dorei Reborn, which talks about various places still being in recovery from the events of the Chroma Conclave, and I can foresee a future where we get like a Marquette setting book that will outline a period of adjustment following these events happening right now in Campaign 3. With Campaign 3 likely ending soon, there are, of course, going to be some threads that will remain loose, although I don't think it will be as many as there were for Campaign 2. There are a bunch of characters I'd love to see again, like the Green Seekers, who, back when they were introduced, I was convinced they were going to really frequently pop up. And I want Ashton to be able to visit their home village, which they were so close to during the party split, and then they didn't have the time to go. I want to know what Olgar is up to. Is he out there riding his goat-pulled sleigh and giving gifts to children? I want to know what is in store for Opal, what happened to Dusk, and of course we can't forget the quest to find Chetney's eggs. I'm sure if they wanted to do some Bells Hells related one-shots, there's plenty of material for them to choose from. Alright, so if Campaign 3 is ending soon, what are we going to see for Campaign 4? Firstly, I think we need to ask ourselves whether or not Critical Role is going to continue with their current format of one long-term, multi-year flagship show and then smaller offshoot or unrelated series, or if they're going to change things up a bit, or a lot. On one hand, Critical Role is most famous for its multi-year campaigns with really long episodes. It's something that a lot of fans appreciate and enjoy about the show. But on the other hand, it can be really challenging to onboard new people when they are faced with hundreds and hundreds of hours of content that they might not want to catch up on. Even if someone wanted to come partway through just one campaign and only try and catch up on that, not even counting the previous campaigns or one-shots, that's still a lot of content to be faced with. Switching to shorter campaigns could have the benefit of generating an influx of new viewers more frequently, rather than someone looking at getting into the show and then being put off by how much content there is and how many years they've already missed. They sort of build Campaign 3 as one that you could watch without having seen anything else, and while, yes, you absolutely can, there are stacks and stacks of references to previous campaigns fairly early in the game, not to mention the point that we're at, right now in it. Really, Campaign 2 is the best one if you want a standalone game because it contained very few references to Campaign 1 and, they start right at the beginning at level 2 and you are with them the whole time, versus Campaign 1 where we jumped in partway through their home game that they brought onto stream. So I think they were at level 9. Anyway, so I guess it's a matter of Critical Role balancing the desire to bring in new audience members while staying true to the format that they are most well known for. Perhaps they'll still do a long campaign for Campaign 4, but it will be closer to 60 or I don't know, maybe 80 episodes, still pretty long, but also shorter. I think we're also going to see more side stories happening like Exandria Unlimited to facilitate more of the crossover shenanigans that we've seen in Campaign 3. I know Matt Mercer has talked about eventually passing on the torch, so having side stories with other GMs would be a fantastic way to introduce those GMs to the audience and get us familiar with them and excited to see them again. Let's talk about system, because a big question on a lot of people's minds is, will Critical Role continue to use Dungeons & Dragons, or will they switch to Daggerheart for their flagship show? For me, it's a no-brainer. Why go to all the effort and expense of writing a game system set in a fantasy world and then not use it for your fantasy actual play, where you can then promote it to your hundreds of thousands of viewers? Let me put this in a really easily clippable moment for when I'm right. Or maybe wrong. Critical Role will be using Daggerheart for Campaign 4. Alright, so next year we can clip that whenever a Campaign 4 announcement is made and we can determine if I'm right or wrong. Making a switch to a new game system will absolutely be a gamble for the company, but I think that they are at such a height now that they can probably weather the loss of some audience members who will stop watching because they only want to watch a Dungeons & Dragons show. I obviously don't have any data on this, but I bet that most critters will be happy to watch them play any kind of game or a different system because, at least for me, and I don't know, I think a good portion of other critters, Critical Role is about the characters and the story, and that will still exist even with new game mechanics. I think if they stick with that kind of high fantasy format, even if the system is different, people are still going to enjoy it. So far, the Daggerheart content that they've put out has performed pretty well in terms of views, just like looking at them on YouTube. And I imagine a lot more people would tune in for a main campaign since it's a lot easier to sort of skip one-shots if you can't fit in any more content to watch. Now, Marisha did say in an interview recently that they will not be putting away their players' handbooks, so I think we will still see some D&D content from them, like sideshows, but I really think that their flagship campaign will be Daggerheart. Switching to a new game system would be a pretty major change for the show, and from my own observations, critters can be pretty resistant to change, which, I can totally understand. For a lot of us, Critical Role is our comfort media, and so any big shakeups to what we're used to can feel jarring. That's why I think Campaign 4, despite potentially changing game systems, is still going to be set in Exandria. The company and the audience have invested a lot in Exandria. We know that world so well, it's familiar, it's comfortable, and it still has a lot of room for exploration and discovery because there are still lots of places we are yet to visit in the world. We haven't seen all that much of Isilra outside of Vasselheim, and we can't forget the Shattered Teeth, which to this day I am devastated that we haven't gotten to see more of. Staying in Exandria but heading to a new location would also give them the opportunity to introduce some of the new ancestries in Daggerheart that we haven't really seen in Exandria before, like fungrels and ribbits. They're so cute. It would be pretty easy to bake it into the world building that the people in these communities live in particular parts of Exandria that we haven't visited before, and that's just why we haven't seen them yet. If they switch to Daggerheart but keep the game in Exandria, it could help ease the transition for the audience. It's okay, it's new, but it's also familiar. Don't panic. Something I would love to see, though, is I would like to see Campaign 4 set further into the future of Exandria so that we can sort of cut loose a lot of the ties to previous campaigns. That sounds kind of harsh, but get a fresh perspective on the world. I know it is really hard to imagine Exandria without Vox Machina in it, but I think having Campaign 4 a bit more separated from those stories will allow new ones to flourish. I also hope that they focus a bit more on smaller scale stories, especially in the beginning of the campaign, to allow time for the development of the, inter-party relationships, something that I feel has been lacking at times in Campaign 3. Maybe 500 years in the future or something, not so long that there are no ties at all, since a lot of creatures can live a long time, but enough time that those previous stories can exist as part of the backdrop and not be so much in the foreground. Now we come to a tricky one. Are we going to see the same cast for Campaign 4? The cast is Critical Role. They're the nerdy-ass voice actors that we've come to know and love, and the energy between them and the chemistry is a major draw card for the show. But I think we do have to accept, as painful as it is, that they are not necessarily going to want to do this forever. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they'll do 10 campaigns together or something, but I feel like the signs are there already that we are in for some cast changes in the future. One thing I noticed was in the announcement of the live shows next year, they used the phrases founding members and founding cast. This, I believe, is the first time they've called themselves this, and while it might just be a way to indicate that Robbie is not in these live shows, I think this phrase is a really clever way to get us all to start thinking about them in that way. Founding cast versus the cast of Critical Role, which has already expanded to include Exandria Unlimited, EXU Calamity, Downfall, the Candela Obscura seasons, Midst, and other Critical Role produced content. Pitching themselves as the founding members gives them room to open up the scope of who is a Critical Role cast member, and I imagine we are going to see more and more people join that roster in the future. Now, I think the company is well aware of the audience's devotion to the founding cast and how difficult any changes they make to the cast of their flagship show is going to be. So I think for Campaign 4, we will likely see the founding cast in the beginning. Again, if they're switching to Daggerheart, keeping the founding cast is another way to sort of ease that transition and ease the audience into something new. However, I wouldn't be surprised if partway through Campaign 4, we start to see new cast members stepping in for stints, founding cast members sitting out for longer periods, and generally that idea of the founding cast and a guest character changing. Rather than guests, I think it will just be other cast members who stick around for more than just an episode or two. And then I think if we're looking further ahead, we might see in Campaign 5 some of those founding members stepping back from being at the table long-term or altogether. We might even see a new DM. Critical Role is assembling their dynasty now. They have so many shows on their docket, including the animated series for Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine. They've talked about wanting to make a video game. They've got a publishing house and a merch store, and it has just expanded so much beyond those founding cast members. Obviously, I have no insight into their lives, nor would I want to, because it's none of my business, but they have got to be extremely busy, and that's not always something that is sustainable long term. Again, I think this process of phasing in new cast members is going to happen extremely slowly so that it isn't a big shock to the audience, but I think it is inevitable, I'm sorry to say. Personally, while I will always enjoy going back to my faves, I am actually really excited for the possibility of new cast members adding something to the mix. Robbie has been an incredible addition for Campaign 3 and he's brought so much to the table, and I think having people with a new perspective can only be a good thing for creating this, wonderfully textured and exciting imaginary world that we all love. So in summary, here are my main predictions. Campaign 3 will be ending either by the end of this year or very early next year, ready for a new campaign to launch around their 10-year anniversary in March. 2, they'll be switching to Daggerheart, but they will continue to do some D&D one-shots and shorter series. 3, the founding cast will appear for the beginning of Campaign 4, but then we will start to see some cast changes to prepare us for longer-term changes in the years to come. Now, of course, these are just my theories and opinions, but I would love to hear what yours are. Let me know if you have your own predictions in the comments, and how would you feel if any of the predictions I've made were to come true? Would you keep watching if they switched to Daggerheart? Would you keep watching if the cast changed? Let me know. And if you're one of those critters who hasn't seen the earlier campaigns and has been confused by all the references in Campaign 3, make sure that you check out my breakdown videos for Campaign 3 where I explain all those references and I go into all the lore and all the good stuff and I just geek out about my favorite moments. Alright, that's all. Bye!